Welcome. This podcast is an exploration into being human and what's possible when there's less attention on the noise in our heads. Warning. While listening to this broadcast, you may experience moments of deep peace, sighs of relief, personal insights, or long stretches of dead air. Do not be afraid. This is normal. Under the Noise with Wyn Morgan and Kate Roberts. Hello and welcome to this week's Under the Noise with me, Wyn Morgan, and my wonderful co-host, Kate Roberts. Hello, Kate.
Hey, Wyn.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
Good.
I'm okay, yeah. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. I have to say, this is a monumental occurrence for me. I'm wearing a sweater for the first time in, I don't know, feels like 2 months, maybe 3. It's no longer too hot. And I can relate to places where they say, oh, geez, you wouldn't like it here in the summer. You want to come in the fall and the spring and stuff. And for the first time since by the time this comes out, I'm probably 52. For the first time in the UK, I can relate to people who live in Madrid, Barcelona, other parts of the world where they say, yeah, don't come here in the summer. It's just too hot. That's a big aside, because the real reason that we're here today is to welcome and hear from Sam.
Hey, Wyn.
Sam, good to see you.
It's wonderful to be here. I'm a big fan of the show, and well, you can hear the train, and I it's funny because I wear sweaters all the time, and this whole summer it's been really hot in Santa Barbara, which it never gets hot. I mean, yeah.
Sam, as someone I know who has listened
Yes.
to us quite a few times, you may be aware that we often ask our guests the question, which is, what would you love people to know about you?
I'm a transformational coach, and I work with people with ADHD, neurodiverse folks, with really noisy brains like myself. And I just got over COVID, and the fascinating thing about it is, I'm not saying I had a great time, it wasn't disco lights, but one of the interesting parts of having COVID, some people have developed brain fog. And some people have anxiety and mood swings. I had brain fog, and it was a fantastic experience. And the reason why is I was so quiet. Even though cognitively it was sometimes difficult to put words together. It was really, really strange. But I loved it because I was present and quiet. I can't explain why. I don't, scientifically, and I'm not wearing my white lab coat, and I couldn't do it if I tried. But it really got me seeing about, like, I'm really a quiet mind enthusiast now. Like, as a coach, I point clients back to that space where we try our best just to make them see when they're up in the hamster wheel, and getting them quiet so they can see stuff. But with my foggy COVID mind, and with, like, me really seeing, like, it's okay. I can't. Some words are coming out funny, and brain fog. Having difficulty concentrating sometimes, but I'm pretty darn quiet, and it's so awesome. It's so great. I know that sounds weird, but being a coach, it's interesting because I thought having this kind of, it wasn't severe brain fog. And again, I'm not an expert in this. I wouldn't be able to work with clients. I wouldn't be able to do my podcast. I wouldn't be able to be on here because I still have a little bit of it. It's like kind of breakthrough. It's like transient. But it was like, it wasn't, I don't even know if it was the brain fog was kind of pointing me back to that space, that lovely space that we all love. Or was it that, like, because I wasn't able to, like, put words together very well. That maybe the only thing I could do is be quiet. I know that sounds strange, but
It doesn't
that's
sound
okay.
that strange. But however, I do want to point that in my mind, this is just my opinion. I would find it also quite easy to get frustrated at myself if I can't find a word, and then I would go faster in my head, not slower.
Mm.
So to me, what you said is a wonderful example of that's not the only way to live.
Yeah. I did initially get frustrated, but it's kind of, I kind of just started relaxing into not being able to get my words together, because it was exhausting trying to fight it, like trying to, people that have aphasia, neurological stuff. I can't imagine what that's like. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good thing, but for me, it was weird because I kind of just pivoted back to just like, okay, I'm a talker and I can't talk. I love talking, but I can't talk. Okay, so I'm just going to be quiet, and naturally, I mean, we get quiet just because that's our default state. That's essentially who we are. It was like I just kind of relaxed into it. It's really cool. Yeah.
I think it would take 3 quiet mind enthusiasts to be enjoying the silence that we just did.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been long ago that I'd have been fill the space. That voice would be there, and it wasn't, not once. For me, anyway. Sam, you mentioned ADHD and neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen that's helping you most work with people who come to you with conditions or diagnoses or present symptoms that would be similar to those diagnoses?
That's a wonderful question. When being a card carrying member, having ADHD, there's no yearly dues, but it comes with an interesting academic for me, because I really writing and communication and history, the other part of the brain, it was very, very strong. So with my clients that either have been diagnosed ADHD or even on the spectrum, and listen, you can call it a ham sandwich. It doesn't really matter. I call it a ham sandwich a lot, and it cracks people up because essentially it is. It's this, we're dealing with quiet mind, busy mind, quiet mind, busy mind. We're doing the quiet mind, busy mind cha-cha. And so I always ask them, and it's one of the typical questions I ask a client is, tell me when, or do you remember a time when you're not overstimulated or you don't have impulsive thoughts? or you are not at, where you're able just to concentrate and you don't know why. Can you take me back to that moment when you just felt like you and you were present and none of the noise was interfering? Or let me reframe that. The noise was there. It's always there. Yeah. So it's a never ending story of noise, but you just stopped caring about it for a second or for an hour. You know, it's like, was it Dr. Strangelove? How I love to fall, like how I got to fall in love with the bomb or something. Remember that ending scene of the movie Dr. Strangelove? So it's kind of like you learn to fall in love with your noise. And ADHD, again, everyone's brain's different. You know, brains are as different as the stars in the sky. You know, not one star is alike, not two stars are alike. But what people, and I just had a client who was a brilliant artist. When she was painting, and she started a business, this is her bread and butter now. She was an ADHD. I mean, yeah, then there was noise up there, but she didn't have to like own those thoughts. She didn't have to pay no mind to it. It was beautiful when she's painting. And that just says a lot about like how brilliantly built we are, how we are designed to deal with any kind of noise that's thrown at us, even though that's, you know, some people say, well, that's easier said than done. I've spent a lifetime, you know, cultivating and categorizing and thinking about my noise. And for folks with minds that are going really fast, I don't like the ADHD label. It's a stigma. And I know, you know, there are plenty of well-meaning clinicians, including Dr. Bill Pettit, who is wonderful. And he'll tell you the same thing, you know, in many respects, he'll say the same thing, that it can be stigmatizing. And for me, it was, because, you know, growing up, going to public high school until I got to college, I would have to go to another building to take some classes because of how my mind worked. You know, I look at ADHD and neurodiversity, and I look at my clients with these brilliant technicolor minds that are just like so interesting and brilliant, and they're empathic, wonderful people. But for most of their, whether they're young adults or even middle-aged adults, for a lot of their life, they've looked at how broken they are. Or how dysfunctional their brain is. I mean, if you type in ADHD and you Google search it, the first thing that comes up is dysfunctional prefrontal cortex, or there's something that's wrong. We need to this too. And I'm actually writing a book that's coming out about this, is that we were never taught how to use the equipment to work for us, right? You know, it's like a pilot, he goes to all this training, he goes pilot training, he learns the science of flight, right? He learns how to use all the switches and all the instruments. And he learns about safety, and he goes 5,000 hours. Well, how many thousands of hours of pilot training? I'm not a pilot, but I love flying. Well, with someone with a very high speed, technicolor, high performance brain, I compare it to like an F1 race car. You know, you would not put regular gasoline in, like, say, a NASCAR. You'd put different kind of gasoline in a Honda. You wouldn't put the same tires on a Honda that you would put on an F1 race car, right? The same thing with a brain like mine that works just a little bit faster, works a little bit differently. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. I mean, we all have different functioning brains, but what came up for me, and what consistently comes up in conversation with my clients, is if I only knew how to use my mind to work for me. You know, we learn how to memorize in school. We learn how to do equations. We learn a language, maybe we learn history, you know, and in this country, we learn about the Constitution, then we might learn about chemistry, and that's memorization. We were not, we don't go, there's no flight training for our brain. Like we don't learn how to use our instruments.
Yeah.
You know, I think this understanding that we're sharing with our clients is exactly what it's flight training for our brain. You know, it's.
So what in particular then, for anybody listening, have you learned about the brain that you've seen for yourself that's really helped you?
That I don't need to. I can view thought as like this salad bar. Like I can look at thoughts like I'm going to. I don't know if you've been to Vegas, going to like the Bellagio, going to a big hotel, and there's like, then their buffets. Like, I mean, there's more agency over thought in some respect, and sometimes you don't, and that's okay too. But we have this thought salad bar. Like when you go to a hotel in Vegas, most of us don't get 10 pieces of chocolate cake and 15 pieces of steak. You know, we have a discernment. But the beautiful thing about all that is that you can choose to have one piece of asparagus if you want. You know, if you like American cheese on your cheeseburger at the buffet, great. You can choose rye bread, you can choose sauteed onions, you can go to town. We can do the same thing with our speedy, noisy brains. And sometimes we want to have a piece of chocolate cake, and that's okay too. We can't get it wrong. I think that we really look at my neurodiverse mind as an example. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Therapy. I mean, they should put a salad bar in my psychologist's office when growing up, because I spent so much time there trying to figure out what's, you know, sharing my, you know, what's wrong, crying it out. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when I started to see for myself that I'm not broken, that I graduated college. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a straight A student. I enjoyed college, had some great professors. That we can still have a successful life with its lumps, with its adversity sometimes. But most importantly, have a quieter, more peaceful life if we see like the gifts that we have, and like how amazing it is. Like it's all there for us. Like we have this brilliant system that does all this amazing stuff. Our brain's brilliant. It's like it's doing all these different things at once. It's keeping us alive, and then we have consciousness, and like I never knew like how amazing, you know, the design of our brain is so amazing. There are no words for it. Like we can create music, we can build a car, we can write literature, we can do science, we can do, it's remarkable. And then it heals stuff, does all kinds of stuff on its own. Like, you know, you get a cut and it heals on its own. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to talk to my pancreas and tell, you know, to do a better job. You know, my large intestine is doing a great job without me being, you know, constantly focusing on I don't have to focus on my large intestine. It's fantastic. But I guess, and then, you know, we can't go back to the past, but for me, when I see clients struggling, especially young adults out of college, for them, I think the greatest challenge for them is just knowing that, like, where they are right now with everything going on in their life and their challenges. And some of them have a lot of outside challenges. You still can have not everything perfect going on. You still could have lots of problems in your outside life and still be pretty darn happy. That took a long time. For me, that took a long time to kind of say, oh yeah, I can, still have problems. I still have a great life. And then have my moments too. And I lose my sanity for a second. But just knowing that I'll be back, hopefully soon, And that's when I started, I want to make t-shirts, quiet mind enthusiast, because it's like, oh my God, it's just amazing. It's like a day at a beach sometimes. Like I woke up this morning and again, I had a little bit of brain fog still, and then some anxiety crept up because I guess, I have a long day and I'm still not feeling 100%. And I'm putting new floors in my place, and all this chaos is in my head, and and we all experience that. And then all of a sudden, and I'm looking at all this thought, all this noise, it's like a ticker tape, it's like the stock market. And I'm looking at it, it's above me. And I'm like, wait a second, that's up there and I'm here, right here, present. And I started getting quiet again for no reason.
So let's see if I get that then. One way of saying the last thing you just said was that you realize that you are not your ticker tape. And the ticker tape can do what ticker tape does, but you can still be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, during moments in my life when there was a lot of stress, and I keep thinking about this, I'm putting this in my book. We had a huge wildfire. I don't know if I shared this with you when we spoke months back. We had a big wildfire about 5.5 months ago. And all Santa Barbara, the whole area was basically on fire in the mountain, the hills, all the way down into the LA area, Ojai, Ventura. And you couldn't breathe. You couldn't even see the sun. The sun was blocked out. Well, the soot and the smoke, you could see the fire. And in any moment, the wind could shift, and there goes the ball game. And people were freaking out for obvious reasons. But I was calm. And I couldn't tell you why. And it was it was bizarre. Very long period of time, and it was getting really bad. And I got out. A friend of mine picked me up, and thank God we got out of the area. The town didn't burn down, thankfully. A lot of other places did. But it goes to show you that our outside forest fire has nothing to do with our current state of mind, and the capacity to have complete peace amidst the forest fire. And I've had, the metaphor is before I was introduced to this understanding, the forest fire of thought going on in my head, it was like towering inferno of heavy, noisy, doom and gloom thoughts, intrusive thoughts. I mean, call whatever you want. I mean, it was like an apocalypse now, redux. And when I kind of saw, oh, okay, there's a possibility for quiet there. In fact, it's not only possible, it is. And all my life, just like you and Kate, we see this all the time. We see that space, and it's just like, oh yeah, I want to spend more time there. I want to be the sweet spot in the tennis racket right there.
Sam, my daughter is 16 now. And she got diagnosed with ADHD when she was, I don't know, maybe first grade.
Oh, well.
And, you know, and I, as a parent, I don't have any experience myself with that. You know, busy mind, yes. I guess the average busy mind, maybe more busy than average, but you know, as a parent, I can do certain things like make sure she has, you know, accommodations at school and that she's getting what she needs there. And we used to wake up at like, or I used to wake up at like 3:30 so that like we would get an hour in the morning for homework, because once she got home, she had nothing to give. Like there was so much, you know. But I honestly think that one of the best things about being her parent was to watch her own wisdom meet her wherever she was at any given moment. And she, by herself, I did not do this. She figured out these ways as she got older to find that quiet. And I don't think she would have any problem with me sharing this, but I noticed years ago that she would pace in a room. She'd find this one little piece of space with all of her junk everywhere, right? And I would watch her shadow from underneath the door, and she's just back and forth, back and forth. So she sticks on her headphones and she paces. And for whatever reason, for her, that brings a quieter space for her. I don't know how that works for her. I just trust that it does. And she has figured out this way of knowing when that is the time. And like, I'll just be hanging out with her and she's like, I gotta pace. She's off, right? She just knows. And her room, we call it the crypt, because it's so dark in there. Like, and she'll just stay in there, right? But it's like her way of turning off one of those, like with all of her, like, she's like overloaded with sensory information. And so the dark helps her like drop in, or at least take some of the noise out, right? And it's just been really like amazing just to be a witness to her wisdom, finding ways for her that leads her to her quiet. So I love what you're saying and the possibility for quiet. I love that.
And thank you for sharing your daughter's experience. It's so funny. I'm having deja vu because that's what I do.
Really?
So I'm going to tell you a funny story briefly. I have a client, mid-40s, lovely person, lovely, like super wicked smart, as probably George Pransky would say, wicked smart, coming from Boston, who paces. And that's what I do. When I'm trying to think of ideas, I'm pacing. When my first job out of college was in pharma sales and marketing, so I did inbound sales, first job. This is before we had Bluetooth. I'm aging myself. So we had the long cord with the headset. So after we were doing cold calling pharmacists. I was in this was a skincare company, and this 22-year-old kid who couldn't sit still for the life of me. I'm tapping my foot. I'm like, and so after like 45 minutes, I get up and I went to when Radio Shack was a thing. You don't have radio. I don't think you have radio. Yeah, I think you did have radio. Yeah, you have Radio Shack in the UK. I bought an extension cord to the headset. I'd get up from my cubicle and literally pace. Initially, I was embarrassed because who's this guy? He's pacing back and forth outside his cubicle doing calls, and I'm closing deals. But I if you took a video of it, who is this maniac? And I mean that with all love, because I know your daughter does this. So my client who does the same thing, and she was really embarrassed because she works in an office setting, and then she works from home too. So I said, let's pace together during our session. So we would be both of us walking back and forth talking, because that was her wisdom leading through. And we come up with some amazing insights and just having an amazing session and conversation just from the pacing. And it's funny, I just wrote a chapter on pacing in my book. The book's called Not Broken. And how like what we think is not wisdom, like pacing, walking, like who would, and there, it sounds ludicrous. Some people like wouldn't even like want to be in the same room with you if you're pacing back and forth. But for me, it was like, I'm going to make this fun. This is just what I know to do to get my brain, back on, unstuck or out of the noise, because my brain, is like, I got 2 PV loudspeakers at a concert, like right up here. So before, like I'm sitting in my office here, and the window's open. Before this understanding, I'd always have to have everything shut, blinds down, like no outside stimuli, right? Because it's so like literally, I would, if a pin dropped, I would like, what? It was so distracting and so painful sometimes, the sound, the auditory stimulation. But now I don't care about it. It's loud. Like my partner, who's also a coach, he's talking in the other room. It's really loud. I don't care. I don't care, because it's an opportunity to get present when I feel overstimulated. And with your daughter, the pacing part is her wisdom coming through, saying, oh yeah, that's how I pivot to presence. That's how I get present.
Well, what came to my mind? The number of, people have got their thing. So I remember stress balls, okay, where you'd have this ball that people would squeeze at work and stuff, and people would do that. They might listen to classical music. They might listen to hip hop or rock or heavy. I don't know, right? We've all got our thing. What the heck is the difference between any of that and pacing? None. There's nothing different. I've got a thing about having a hot drink before every call. It's my version of pacing. It's no different.
I love that you mentioned that, because for a lot of folks, they're so embarrassed, folks that were given this label, especially teenagers, because of who we are versus this label given to us. It's so foreign. It's like an alien came down from another planet, and like you're going about your day, you have your struggles, you have your whatever, your quirks, whether you're a kid or you're an adult, you're living life. And somebody comes from, it's like coming from another planet and just like lands there and just says, okay, you're ADHD. This is your diagnosis. And then especially kids are like, what do you mean? Later on, we know later that it's a CPT code, insurance and all that stuff. But I also think ADHD is a wonderful gift, the label, because it allows us to see that regardless of whatever a label is, it doesn't change who we are ever. Mm. It doesn't. That's nothing. That's like stardust. Age is made up. This is the bottle. We call this a bottle. Yeah. And I when we point to, especially when I work with clients, when I point to the fact that like, you don't realize how blessed you are to have a brain like that, a really fast moving, high performance brain that you're learning how to use, that you'll never be 100% perfect at it, using your brain to work for you. But when it works, holy cow. When someone with a speedy technicolor mind works, when everything's working as it should, wow, watch out. The perfect example of some of the most brilliant inventors and writers and musicians, politicians have this label called ADHD. Some of the greatest artists have bipolar disorder, or have, again, whatever you want to label it. What really is kind of what really makes me sad sometimes is when you see someone like a client that spent so much time really suffering, and they're still suffering, and you really see their light, you see what they're capable of. But just like the pilot that needs the pilot training, that the thousands of hours, or how many hours it is of in-flight training, all they need is a little bit of in-flight training to learn how to use their mind to work for them and not against them. But like anything else, like if you didn't have training, most people, when we're little kids, when we ride a bike for the first time, we have training wheels, unless you're just, one of those people can ride a bike without training wheels for the first time. I know I need the training wheels. And then you take the training wheels off and it's amazing. And that's where I kind of, it's really disheartening for me to see that sometimes, like people, they're struggling with a mind they just don't know how to use, because they weren't given the proper flight training, brain training. It's so amazing what we can do if we're just pointed back to like what's possible when we have just a little bit of understanding about how our mind works.
Which includes not taking everything from the salad bar.
That's exactly right.
Being able to let that go in the same way as a pin falling outside is, I don't have to pay attention to every single thing I've ever thought.
Yeah.
And in working with people with neurodiverse, then that fact alone is for them to remember that they've not always acted on or listened to every single thought that they've had, and that makes them the same as everyone. It's really reassuring. I've not found anyone yet that's seen the truth of that and then not been like, wait, that is true. I do not have to have 3 pieces of chocolate cake, even if it goes by underneath my neck.
Struggle's real though, Wyn. Struggle's real. we had tiramisu yesterday, like our favorite restaurant in San Francisco, and I could have eaten 10 pieces of it. Oh my God, forget about it. Divine. I look at everything as an opportunity to pivot to presence. I know that sounds like so cheesy. But it's so easy. So let me reframe that. It's so natural, right? And with, Kate, with your daughter, when she's pacing, her wisdom saying, this is the natural thing for you to do, right? It's like if you look at a conductor in a symphony, like they're moving their hands, obviously, but they're doing all kinds of interesting movements. I think it's human beings, we need to move. We got to keep on moving. Like that soul to soul song is, cheesy song, but it's true. We got to keep on moving because
that was not a cheesy song. That was a great song.
I'm 48, and so like, who is telling us that we need to sit in a queue? Like, we are conditioned to sit in a cubicle, sit in a classroom, ask for a bathroom pass, growing up. And even out of school, our conditioning dictates that, we have to do things a certain way. We have to, and for folks that are neurodiverse, and again, that can mean a lot to, a lot of different things to many people. It's a kind of a broad term. Fortunately, the negative connotation associated with it. Originally, neurodiversity was basically people that don't have atypical, quote unquote, behaviors, and whatever that is. Obviously, you don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to rob anybody. You don't want to kill anybody, but atypical behaviors. Yeah. Someone who's, not on the spectrum, or someone who doesn't have ADHD. And now we're seeing is that, well, there's like 180 million folks out there and more with neurodiverse minds. It's like, we can start our own country. Or more that we know. There's probably more. As I saw, there was a researcher out there. I think it was a psychiatrist who did a studies like, and his conclusions were that almost 75% of people in the United States have some form of ADHD. Well, yeah, because we like to move around. We're not sedentary creatures. We need to keep moving.
What was the percentage again, Sam?
Like 75% of Americans in some capacity of ADHD.
Well, that just shows how nonsensical. Something that is, quote, different is more common than what isn't different. Something's wrong there, statistically, right?
100%. So I go ahead. You're saying something. I've been doing these webinars recently on driving anxiety, and it's it's a Venn diagram. It's anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and I'm fascinated by it because I have driving anxiety, busy mind, and one of the participants, what if I never able to drive on the freeway again? What if I'm just that's what that's going to be my forever. And I said to him, well, maybe that's your wisdom. I don't know, but you'll find other ways to drive and other roads to drive. And who says that's wrong? You'll figure it out. At that time, you'll figure it out. You don't have to figure it out right now. We had another participant that had ADHD, or had diagnosed ADHD and anxiety disorder, and a couple other things. And they couldn't make left turns without like having a panic attack. And it was very real to them. Left turns anywhere, even in their residential street. And I don't even know why. They're just like before, I would drive everywhere and there was no triggering event. It just one day just had a lot of thinking around making a left turn. And one day, it was interesting. She was telling me that she got into a fight with her partner, her husband, and she was able to make a left turn. So it's like it's the degree of noisy thinking that we have. You know, the noise shifts, changes. You know, it's like an amoeba. It molds into other types of noise. She was able to make a left turn because she didn't have, you know, left turn anxiety thinking. She had, I hate my partner thinking, you know, so she could make a left turn. And that's like the wonderment of it all. Like, that's why I'm a quiet mind enthusiast, or I'm just a mind enthusiast, because it's so interesting on so many levels. Like, you know, one day you're having terrible anxiety making left turns, and then the next day you're making, you know, you're fine. But there's where the freedom is. Like, and also how good it feels just to know, once you start trusting yourself, like you'll know what to do when you need to make a left turn. Maybe you'll make a U-turn instead. I don't know, but know what to do.
It's so true. You know, it's amazing when I think we realize that no matter what, you know, diagnosis or labels, even the ones that we give ourselves, you know, about who we are, that, you know, wisdom calls us all the same. It's always calling. It never stops, and will meet us no matter what label we have. I love that.
And I love that three of us can come together and really not have a plan of what we're going to talk about. And then we just know. Exhibit A, right? Like, you know, I think when you mentioned before, you know, you work with corporate companies and you do group facilitations and the corporate world. Like, and you mentioned that, like, you do your most brilliant, like, you have your most brilliant insights with your corporate clients. Like, you're not thinking about a 3-point plan. You're not thinking about what you need. It just comes to you. And you're no good to them when you're trying to find those answers up in the cloud, like the Apple cloud, the iCloud of gobbledygook up here. Like, that's really cool. And I thought for most of my life, like, that the iCloud is where you figure it out. And that's why this understanding, like, it's a game changer. It's like, I think when you and I talked about the dolphins, it's like, it's the 72 dolphins. When you're like, when you have an insight, when you're like, it's like all your favorite players are on the field. Like, you know, you got a young Don Shula coaching. Like, I'm a Dolphins fan, obviously. Okay, you can figure that out. Never give up on the Dolphins, even if they suck. But that's what it's like. And for folks, whose brain synapses just a little differently. Sometimes it's just ordinary. Actually, a lot of times it's ordinary. The gift in that is now I know that every time I am really caught up, it's really loud. Some days, like this morning, it was really loud. Random moments are really, especially the intrusive thoughts are just flying through you. And they're like in pink neon thoughts, like they're just technicolor thought, like, and you could be at the gym or with a client or driving on the freeway. And driving, that's why the driving part was difficult, is still difficult for me sometimes. It's like that. It's the ultimate kind of litmus. It's telling you, kid, you're looking at it from the wrong. You're looking at the noise as something that means something. You just gotta like get present. I heard someone say, the greater the greater the noise, the bigger the illusion.
That's true in my experience.
Yeah.
And just one thing on the Miami Dolphins this year.
Wow.
Their new head coach is adored as a character because of how different Mike McDaniel is compared to everyone else.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You listen to him at a press conference. Okay, it's before the start of the 2022 season, so who knows how this is going to play out, but they love him because he's himself, not giving the political answer. And that's one reason why he got the job, in my mind anyway, is because of how different he is. How himself he is, I'm going to say it that way. Yeah. So thanks for sharing everything, Sam. It's been really cool.
Very cool.
Thanks, Sam, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Wyn. You've been listening to Under the Noise. I'm Kate Roberts, and I'm here with Wyn Morgan, my co-host, and today we had Sam Ladd. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for topics, please reach out. Our information follows the podcast. Have a great week. Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have a topic or question that you'd like us to chat about, email Wyn or Kate at wyn@winning.co.uk and kate@katerobertscoaching.com. Until then, enjoy what's possible under the noise.